Upgrade your shit.
Yo, what up? I'm Coach RT3.
I'm not a what?
And we're the Upgrade Guys. So welcome to the Upgrade Your Shit podcast. For those of you who are new to the podcast, get ready, fasten your seatbelts, because we're about to blast off.
It's about to go down.
So for those of you who don't know, we got a 12-week hip course, 12-week shoulder course on our website. You can check out all of our mobility stuff at theupgradeguys.com because, of course, we are sponsored by The Upgrade Guys and no one else. But, yo, we are so happy today because we have one of my good friends, Chris Flores, also known as Chris Flo. I met Chris, I guess it's about 4 or 5 years ago now, which is crazy to think about that. He was my animal flow instructor, and right here in San Francisco, we stayed connected, and later on we reconnected and on the East Coast and did the Movement Art Summit together, and then we did another one here in the Bay Area together, which has been over a year since we did that one. Wow. It's just crazy. It feels like it was just yesterday. But we're really happy to have Chris on to share with you his background, what he does, what he's doing, where he's going, and just talk some shit generally. So Chris, could you tell everybody, your background about yourself, how you got into this thing and where you're at now, how it lead to where you're at now?
Yes, for sure. First of all, thank you guys for having me on here. It's a pleasure meeting you, getting to meet Nat when I went out there and just spent some time with you guys and share some space was an amazing experience. And I'm happy to be on this. I'm blessed to be on this podcast. You guys are doing an amazing job with all the info and the content you guys are putting out. It's freaking great. As far as where I started super early. I started at 15, training people in my parents' basement. I started lifting in high school because I was playing basketball. And to be honest, brutally honest about fitness, it started 100% ego driven. I had a couple friends who were lifting, they were brolic, and I noticed kids in school were scared of them. So I was like, yeah, if I lift like that too, I'm automatically gain that respect. And so I started lifting, and one thing led to another, and it just helped me with basketball, helped me with sports, helped me get girls. And then that's ultimately what led me to continue on in fitness, where I was like, oh, if you got a six pack and nice arms, you can talk to a lot more ladies. So it was honestly purely sports and ego driven early on. And then it became, I didn't think it was a real career. So I started working in the gym at 18, got hired at Workout World down in Freehold. Ironically, for those who watch Jersey Shore, I used to work with Mike the Situation at the gym. If you guys remember that Jersey Shore show. But so I was working there for a couple of years. Didn't think it was a real job. Got offered a manager position. And at that point, I had started school. I was going to school at Kane University for athletic training. And so I started down that route, and I was going to quit school just to pursue fitness because I was offered this managerial job at the gym. And luckily I didn't. I continued with school and got a career in athletic training. I worked at a high school setting for 10 years, taking care of thousands of athletes from all different sports and, dealing on the injury side of everything. So seeing injuries happen in real time, seeing recovery, seeing some of the horrendous physical therapy, seeing some really good physical therapy, and seeing that there was a lack of movement in both parties, to be brutally honest. So got to see some great strength coaches come in and work with our high school kids, got to see the worst of the worst strength coaches. And again, there was a lack of movement with all that. And so that stuff kept ringing in my mind, and I discovered animal flow. And when that hit, it was just like, oh, okay, this makes way more sense. I was already in the movement realm from studying Tom Myers and anatomy trains and fascia. And then the animal flow thing took me more in that rabbit hole of movement and learning more about movement. As you guys know, took the FRC with Spina, started learning about some of the FRC principles and what they do. and put all this stuff together, I wound up leaving high school to just pursue fitness full time and public speaking and all that other stuff. And so that's where I'm at now, where I'm no longer in the realm of the school district. I'm not bounded by anybody. I've adopted more, I guess, in a, to be controversial, Kanye West Dame Dash mindset, where we're going to be doing our own thing and make sure we own all our own stuff. And that's how we got linked up for that Movement Arts Summit. It's like, we're trying to do our own stuff. And I actually watched your live the other day, where we can't complain about not given the opportunity. We got to create our own opportunities. And so I've always had that entrepreneurial mindset. And so that's where I'm at now with my business, with the book coming out soon, with all this stuff. It's, I want to make sure I own all that stuff and help people like myself. If I want other Latinos to be in fitness, I got to get out there and start presenting and bring them up with me. So that's where I'm at now, and how we met and did the Movement Arts Summit. And that's where I'm at today.
Oh, so let's jump back, because I think you
a
told
lot
me
there.
this story. Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there. You told me this story before about how you came into Animal Flow,
Yeah.
which I think is interesting. I think it'd be useful for people in general, because I think people oftentimes don't realize how things just kind of happen a lot of times. People think it's like some complex thing, and like you said, you were around like back when it all started. So
Yeah.
can you just share with us how
Yeah.
that
100%.
story?
So without pooping on other I guess programs, but so I was
You can do that as much as you want on this
yeah, I know
podcast.
I know where I'm at, so I'm just like time to name drop. No, so what happened was, honestly, I was one of my best friends. She was the first 5 employees of TRX when they were still in Randy's garage,
Yeah.
right? So she was working with TRX. So I got linked up with TRX through her. I didn't ever get offered a job as a master instructor, but I met a ton of people. One of the people I met was my buddy Doc Perry. Doc Perry from Stop Chasing Pain. So I met him. And then my friend from Puerto Rico, this woman, Anna, she actually opened a Flo Fitness in Puerto Rico. So me and her were working together. We created this whole thing. She saw my business model in the US and wanted to take it to Puerto Rico. So we linked up, and then she was like, hey, I'm coming to take this thing called Animal Flow. And I never heard of it. So I was like, all right, this looks whatever. I go on YouTube like we all do now on the internet. And I saw Mike Fitch, the creator of Animal Flow. You know, to be brutally honest, and I've told him this before, so I'm not talking trash. I'm watching this white boy from Miami do all this stuff on his hands. And I'm like, bro, if he could do that shit, I can do it. Like, come on, man. Like, because you're watching the move and you're like, it looks like it's not that hard. So I called my buddy Perry because I knew he took the course. He's like, yo, it's legit. Like, Mike's the truth. Like, go there. I'll hook you up. I'll tell him you're coming, so you'll get a free workshop. And I'm like, all right, cool. So I go to the workshop. I didn't pay for the workshop. Perry hooked me up, and I'm sitting in the back, and they're taking attendance, make sure everyone paid. I'm keeping my mouth shut. And so I start taking the workshop. So my idea was, if I help out a lot and like participate, this guy's gonna start to like me. He make sure he won't charge me later on, because I had my rent money literally in my pocket in case they charge me. So took the course, man, and it was super hard. Like, it was nowhere where it's like now. Now they've not watered it down, but they've got really specific and very detailed on the motion. At that point, it was like, here's a move, here's a move, here's a move, here's a move. And like, it was hard, but my body also wasn't ready. And I thought I was in shape. I had done Tough Mudders. I had done all this stuff. I thought I was ready to go. And my body was not at all, shaking and everything, but I kept participating. And through that, me and Mike actually wound up becoming friends. And every time he flew into New York, New Jersey, I was, hey, man, I'll help you out. I'll help you out. I'll help you out. So I helped him. And eventually got offered, like a year or two later, he called me up like, hey, buddy, you want to be a master instructor? And I'm like, sounds good. And I've been teaching with them ever since. That was, I think, was like 6 years ago. So it was very organic. It wasn't like I forced my resume upon him or anything. It was a mutual friendship that kind of just turned into an opportunity later on.
Yeah, that's pretty dope.
So I got a question. What did Flo Fitness look like before Animal Flow?
So my gym was, again, FLO. There's no W in Flo Fitness, kind of a play on my last name. Honestly, Flo Fitness looked like it was a ton of TRX stuff. So I had like 4 TRXs hanging. It was some lifting. It was just a ton of my own creativity, because at the time, the only reason I opened the gym, to be brutally honest, was no one else allowed me to do what I wanted to do in their gym. So I got in trouble at Bally's because I had a kid running on a treadmill, and I was pulling him on an elastic band on a treadmill, and it wasn't going fast. So it wasn't like I was yanking the kid off the treadmill, But my idea was introducing some chaos because he was an athlete. I'm like, well, you got to introduce some chaos. I had him doing lateral shuffles on a treadmill because we didn't have space. There was no open space at the gym. It was machine, 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 machine. I mean, we're talking, not that it was that long ago, but 2007. So
Seems like
yeah, it seems like it was
1,000 years
not that
ago.
long ago, but for some
Shit.
people, this is a very long time ago, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I started when I was 15. I'm 38 now, so it's been a long time. But lateral shuffles on a treadmill because we had no space in the gym. So I was doing all these like stuff. I had my own kettlebell. I had my own TRX when I walked in the valleys. I had my own battle rope. I literally had a giant backpack I was walking around with to train my clients because they had none of that stuff there. And so that's how Flo Fitness started. It was literally my huge duffel bag. I wound up renting out small space in Westfield, New Jersey, rented a small room and started training my clients like that. All my equipment's from my parents' basement, a couple TRXs, a couple sandbags. I had done a lot of work with Ultimate Sandbag at the time. It was really cool with them. And that's how it all started, man.
That's what's up, man. I did not know that. That's real cool. So that you were in a big boxer gym before any of the functional shit came around,
Yeah.
right? So like anything you did was like, what the fuck is wrong with this? That's the weirdo nowadays. That's the person doing cars in 24-hour fitness, right?
Exactly. I was the weird guy in the corner. My clients doing, again, all the strange stuff. And it was funny because I was the weird guy then. And one way to kind of put in perspective was as odd as I was then, when it came into the world of athletic training and rehab, I was even more strange because they did no fitness stuff. So they were just doing like band, protraction, retraction, internal, external rotation with the band and basic foot pumps, ankle pumps. And I'm like, what if we get this athlete standing on one foot and reaching across the body and then holding this thing? Like I was really trying to think outside the box for rehab because I was like, these athletes are so bored. And, you know, if you take an ACL injury, for example, you look at an ACL injury, there's so much more than just flexion extension at the knee joint. We got to look at the ankle. We got to look at the hip. We got to look at the whole body. We got to get the kid barefoot. They weren't even doing barefoot stuff in rehab. So it was like, here I am, friends with Dr. Emily, learning all this barefoot stuff, learning all this fascia stuff, learning all this functional. And I just wanted to bring it everywhere I went. So as much as I was ahead kind of at that point of the curve in fitness, I was even way more ahead when it came to therapy and stuff like that at that time.
That's cool. Go ahead, Rich.
I think that's all really interesting because like that time frame, I guess you're saying is like 2007 to 2010, 2009. And I was overseas. So for me, like while Chris Flo's story is going on, my story is like in a space where I have access to none of this. Like I don't have any I don't have any friends who are creating anything. I don't have any, people who are like and I think people like I think we need to get make this point because we're now like 13 years removed from that 2007. So,
Wow.
at that time we had YouTube and very few people were on YouTube doing anything. Instagram was not even a thought. So the ability to like actually see anything going on or be able to like say, hey, that's different, that's unique, what does that mean, how does that, how can I make this a part of what I'm doing, isn't just not available. It's not readily available. Like I feel like the last 3 to 5 years has been this explosion of thoughts because people have access or windows into what's going on.
Well, I'll give you a crazy story about that. So when the Rip Trainer, you guys use the Rip Trainer, when it first came out, I was at URSA, the World Show, when TRX first launched the Rip Trainer. So Pete Holman's there doing all this crazy Rip Trainer stuff. And so I was like, told my friend, I was helping Denise out there. I'm like, yo, I need one of these. Like, save me one in the back. Those things sold out. When they first launched Rip Trainer at URSA, it must have sold out in like 2 hours. Like, it was ridiculous. Like, the whole booth in the show was crazy. Everyone at the convention center around TRX, they wanted this thing. And so I got 2 of them. I fly back to New Jersey. And the next day, I'm like, yo, this thing is hot. We got to put video out on YouTube. It's still on YouTube to this day. It's horrendous. It's one of the worst videos ever, right? but it's me and like 3 of my friends, and I'm like, yo, we have a flip cam we're filming it with. I don't know if you guys remember the flip cam. You can only get a certain amount of time on the flip cam to film it. So I'm on this flip cam, and cell phones, I don't even think had cameras you could film and download at the time. So we're doing all these crazy rip trainer exercises, and like, I mean, it's ridiculous. Like some of it is actually maybe 5 exercises are cool. It's like 15 horrendous exercises. Put it up on YouTube. Like 4 days later, the thing went like viral within fitness, right? And people are like shitting on the video because it's so bad. But a bunch of people, TRX hadn't released any content for the rip trainer yet. They had no, like to your point, they had no video stream content for that tool yet. It had just come out.
Right.
So my YouTube video is one of their first rip trainer introductions for people. So poor people going online looking at my rip trainer video, and it's bad, but it got a ton of views, a ton of attention. And my friend was telling me she was at a board meeting, and my name was actually brought up because they were like, how can this kid in New Jersey have videos out before us? And the owner was furious about the fact that my videos were some of the first rip trainer videos out. But to your point, there was nothing else available.
Colonized the colonizer.
Yeah. You got to check out the video when you're done here. It's horrendous, but I'll send it to you. And I don't take any of my old content down for that reason. I want people to see the evolution. Like, dude, here's where I was in 2008, 2009, and here I am now. So when you're comparing yourself to someone like I mentor a lot of kids, and they're like, I want to be where you are. I'm like, all right, go watch my first YouTube videos in 2008, and then we can have a discussion, because you're just starting out. You should be aiming for that passion and that drive, not to where I'm at in this moment in my life.
That's a good point.
Yeah, that's a really good point. How was it in the early years, like working like within the schools? I mean, because that's one area we actually share some common ground. Like I was an assistant to an athletic trainer here at City College of San Francisco. And so my first like real introduction to like working with people was with an athletic trainer who I still really give a lot of credit for, like a lot of my mindset and a lot of like, the things which I do, and like just taking me in this direction and trajectory. Um, how did you feel about it? Because I know I have my opinions about why I didn't become an athletic trainer in a junior college setting or in a college setting.
To be brutally honest, I'm very happy I did it. That I finished the college and I got through the hard part, which is the education, because it's very limiting. It's very, here's the insertion and origin of a muscle, here's the bones, here's how it works, but not how the system works. Like we're not taught how it interacts. We're taught the parts.
Yeah.
And then it's up to us to kind of what you guys are doing, upgrade ourselves to understand that that part is a part of the whole, and how's the whole work, and how's that one piece part of the whole unit. And so I learned the basics first through school, and learning, really dived into detail with, bones insertion, origins, nerve innervations, and things of that nature. And then I was blessed at the school I was working at. The lady, the woman who was in charge there, was actually one of my mentors, and she was extremely open-minded. So when I came in, she was like, do what you want. And I was her assistant for my first 2 years. And basically, as her assistant, she just gave me full reins of the wheel and sat back, and she did paperwork and chilled. And I'm foam rolling kids. I'm doing stim with motion. So while they're being, electric stim, I'm doing range of motion while they're being stim. That wasn't really something people were talking about, but it was like, this looks like it could work. Like, and I'm just really experimenting. It sounds bad that I'm experimenting with children. It wasn't really fully experimental, but it was ideas I had, like, this could work. Like, why are we stimming before we move? So I started thinking about, all right, well, if I do some soft tissue work, some foam rolling, then what if we move the muscle, then activate, because they have poor motion, let's get them having better motion. And then I remember a buddy told me a long time ago that load cements movement, right? So, all right, let's load them up with the right movement pattern, and let's put load on the body. So we should be lifting as part of rehab. And so I put all these pieces together, and that was just over time, over years of testing. Oh, that worked. This didn't work. I used to do a lot of ART work on kids and then send them out to play. And so I was giving them this crazy range of motion with no control whatsoever. Kid would come back the next day, his arm can barely move. I'm like, oh, why is that? Let's do it again. And you know what I mean? Like there was a lot of things I did wrong. I made mistakes along the way, but I think the biggest thing is that you fail forward. And so I learned each one taught me a little bit more of a lesson. And you know, I didn't do anything so crazy that someone would get severely hurt, right? But some of the ideas were a bit out there, and now some of them are commonplace. But if it wasn't for her confidence in me and saying, like, you know your stuff, give it a go, I think I would have not liked athletic training as much as I did, because I was actually in charge at the high school. So that for me was like, there was no one above me. There's no like person telling me yes or no, you can't do these things. It was like me being kind of creative
Mm-hmm.
and being able to pave my own path.
So, do you still train people today, or you do you? Or I mean, like before times COVID. So, like, if somebody were to come into you now, what does your process look like?
Oh yeah, I still have clients today. Even during COVID, I still had clients coming in because it's such a small space, you know. So it's semi-private group. So I'll do like maybe 3, 4 people most of the time. We all have our distance. But my process now is I have an assessment we do. So we do a movement assessment, very similar to a movement screening, except we'll throw in beast with limb lifts. We'll throw in a crab with limb lift, just to see rotary stability through that. And then once I see how the person moves, that's when I start approaching what may be wrong with them. Again, not fixing someone, but where your issue may be coming from. Because I get a lot of people, my knee's been hurting, my back's been hurting for years. No one can figure it out. I got this one kid I'm dealing now who had brain cancer. He just started coming to me. They had him doing PT, never did any ground-based movement. Um, and they just got him doing standing on one foot after brain surgery and wondering why this kid's not getting better at balance. Um, that's a whole nother thing. So these are the types of people I get coming to me. So I usually get to assess their movement, and I really do start them from the ground up. Like we'll start with see what soft tissue restrictions we may have, but let's get you crawling. And that's why I love the Animal Flow program, because it's taught me so much about ground-based movement. Original strength was another one that helped a lot with movement. You know, learning how to do rocks and rolls and stuff like that for the on the ground. And then I'll use some FRC stuff to get better ranges of motion if they don't have that, with that motor control. And then so we just basically start all over again, which is the best part about it is when they can get back to fundamentals and get that moving, everything else just gets better. And you know, it's hard to explain that to people because they want the bigger, faster, stronger. And that's why I don't necessarily work with high level athletes as much as I used to, because it's like their mindset is just not there. They just need to go, 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 go. And I'm trying to teach you how to use your brakes and control the car, and you just want to hit the gas and go. And so it's like there's strength coaches that'll do that, and you do footwork all day and speed work. And when it all falls apart, here's my number, because it's going to fall apart if you keep doing what you're doing. And so that's where I usually come in. And that's kind of, I guess, my process.
Um, I want to touch on that athlete thing where, like, in their mind, I mean, and part of it I think is psychological because, like, high level athletes are, I mean, they might not necessarily have anything physical that's too much different, right? But it's the mindset. It's
Mm-hmm.
like, how does your brain work? And there's a culture like within our industry that, like, you know, because when you see athletes training, they do the highlight reel of like they're doing all the shit that one makes no fucking sense to me but looks really cool, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then, like, people get in their heads like, oh, this is the way the athletes train, that's the way I should train, like this is something for me to value and something for me to, when, like, in reality, like, they shouldn't be fucking doing that shit, and that's a lot of reason why they're getting fucked up now. And then, like, I'm hearing some crazy ass shit about how they train professional athletes, like they're not lifting, it's like it's not functional, or like you're doing functional shit but then, like, you know all these non-contact injuries. So, like, I'm just really confused about how all that shit really fucking works.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, one thing I found out about 2 years ago, and then I heard a podcast about the guy who works with LeBron. He's
Oh,
actually an athletic
fuck.
trainer. He's actually an ATC by trade. And so if you get someone who's been healthy for 17 years, there's got to be something they're doing right, right? You can't be healthy for that long in the industry. And yes, genetics plays a huge role. I think we oftentimes in the industry forget about genetics in sports. But when you got someone whose career is based on injury prevention, like high level athletes, and I'm sure you guys have worked with them, but when you work with high school kids especially, there's this thing that no one talks about that happens called puberty. And so you get a kid who goes from 14 and he's 5 feet tall, and all of a sudden a year and a half later he's 6'2". And then some coach would be like, yeah, look how much faster I made him. Motherfucker, he was gonna get faster anyway. You didn't have to do anything. You could have sat there and babysat him, and he just grew a foot. Like, you can't take credit for that. And there's so many people taking credit for the fact that a kid's vertical went 8 inches higher, but he grew 4. You didn't talk about that part. And so you have people thinking, and to their own ignorance, sometimes they think they're great at what they do. But realistically, if you get a kid from 15 to 18, most of the stuff you think is happening is really going to happen naturally anyway. Now you're loading dysfunction, which is actually what you're training them to do it better the wrong way. And then when they're 18, 19, they get injured in college or injured in the pros, and they're scratching their head wondering, oh, it must have been what I did last night. No one looks back to when they were 14 and you taught them these horrible patterns and didn't teach them how to lift properly. So I saw a lot of that when I was in high school, and that's what drove me nuts, because it's like, hey, here comes some guy or some former pro athlete's going to come train our kids. And then you watch them what they do, and you're like, no, not for 15-year-olds. Like, that's going to kill them. But they're 15, so they don't get hurt. So they think they're doing it right.
I feel like
so there was a lot of that.
we just had that. We literally just had that conversation with Coach Preston Hale down in Arizona on our previous podcast, where we kind of talked about, we dove into that topic of the former professional athlete or the former college athlete or whatever suddenly becoming the expert trainer, like right out the gates. You know, it's like guys have been in this industry, like living this for years and like applying these things to people for years. But then this guy comes out who's like has a name behind himself or whatever, and suddenly, you know, he's the go-to guy because he was fast or because he could jump high. And it's like that's not the way in which we should be. Like, put it this way, I'm not going to ask LeBron James to make me, like, when he retires, I'm not going to be like, yo, LeBron needs to be strength training everybody, and because, you know, he knows because he's a pro. Or even, I mean, some elements of just because you played the sport doesn't necessarily make you a good coach either, right? So, you know, who knows what kind of personality or how he can like convey his message to people to get them to do what he's asking to be done. We don't know, right?
Did you ever hear Michael Jordan talk about that, why he'll never coach?
No, I never heard
So
that.
he talked about that in I was watching an interview, and he said, he's like, I don't have the patience for these kids. Like, my idea of what they should be doing to get better is not their idea, and I don't know how to make them understand what I'm trying to say, because Jordan just was the thing. Like, that was just his normal way of thinking. Like, I'm going to destroy everyone, and I'm not going to leave this gym until I'm the best. And he doesn't know how to make other people think that way. So he's like, I could never be a coach. He's like, I would get physical with them. Like, you know, he's going to fight you if you don't listen to him. And that's not legal in our sports, you know. Like, imagine a coach is punching kids in the face and not listening, right? But he knows he's a dog. Like, that's his mindset.
Yeah.
And so he knows he can't coach. And to your point, like, sometimes there's things you can't coach, man. There's things that are not measurable.
For sure.
I kind of feel like, I don't know if I made this point last time, but like, people who are talented, naturally athletic or whatnot, are like become, you know, anomalies in athletics. A lot of times, just like you were saying, like from here to there, shit is happening, but they don't really know how it happened. They just, in their mind, you're like, I'm just gonna keep working, right? So that would make it harder for you to translate what made you good, especially if you don't know outside of that work ethic, right? If you can pass on the work ethic, I think that is also like super value, but knowing what to do and why and when is super important. And if you don't study that, like, you can't really know it, right?
Absolutely. I think 100% to that point. And that's why I think we're going to see more. We're seeing it now, but we're going to see it more in the next couple of years. All these pro athletes are all going to be children from pro athletes. And because, you know, what happens is, I know for me, for basketball, you go to different camps and someone teaches you a different way to shoot at every camp. Like, every coach, like, this is the way to do it. This is like, how many people talk about squat forms? There's 900 people out there saying their squat form is the best, right? But if your kids get to learn how you squat from the age they are now, they're never going to deviate from that path. Like, so they're going to learn it the right way the first time, and they're going to be able to duplicate that. Look at Steph Curry. Like, if your dad's a professional basketball player and a great shooter to begin with, you're going to learn the right mechanics early, and then you're going to continue on that path versus the kid who didn't learn and is heaving the ball up and then have to relearn it, then relearn it, then relearn it. But if you have a professional early on work with you and show you the exact way to do something, now it's just a matter of mastering that skill the rest of your life. And I think that, again, I think we're going to see a lot more of former kids, dads or whatever, you know, coming into the league or different sports. And in fitness, I think like our kids are going to be the ones doing some dope stuff later on.
Oh,
No doubt. I love the Steph Curry chat too, because I had this conversation with my best friend from college, who's down in SoCal, and we were talking about, I think a couple of years ago, about Steph and his shot. And my best friend is a basketball like freak. Like that's how we kind of like connected really in college, like playing ball together. And then we're like, oh shit, we're in the same major. Oh, I seen you on the court. Oh, okay, cool. So then, but you know, he was just like, you know, what resonated with me was when he said, look at Steph Curry's like forearm angle, look at his overhead range of motion. And I was like, oh shit, you're speaking my language. I was like, he was like, because like when he goes to shoot the ball, he was like, and then he was like, you might want to look at his like wrist extension too. Like how much wrist extension does he have? You know? And I was like, oh shit. Like I had like, okay, now you're like hitting me with like the actual like, you know, cause I'm in the middle of FRS, right? Like, okay, you need X amount of this, X amount of that. And it comes back to capacity to do something, right? So you look at Steph Curry's abilities, he has the capacity, like a broad capacity, so that the skill that he has fits neatly inside of that broad capacity to do the task you're asking him. Like get your elbow here, get your forearm here. Like you need it to be vertical, you need it to be straight, not built. You know, it's going to change the trajectory of the ball and all that sort of stuff. So I think that's pretty dope way to kind of look at, you know, athletes' abilities and how they complete tasks.
I still think it's nuts that most basketball players, um, I know that their shoes are meant to like, you know, provide a degree of stability or whatever, right? But just like I feel like you lose not on a lot if you don't train outside of that. You know, like if you don't give the feet action. And it's still fucking nuts to me that how many of them don't. And like, was it a year or two ago when Steph had like issues with his ankle?
Yeah,
That
and you're
shit ever
starting to
did?
see some of them. I know some guys I've talked to. My friend right now is actually, he just flew back from Atlanta. He was trying to work with some of the guys out there. A bunch of the pros were out there. And we've talked about, and now some of them are coming in for warm-ups barefoot because they're learning the importance of their feet, because that's their bread and butter, man. You think about it, like that's your career is based on if your feet and ankles stay healthy and your knees.
It's
Like if you can
incredible
keep that
how
stuff healthy, you know, obviously hips and everything else, but with basketball players, you gotta, if you keep that stuff healthy, man, and you can get a stretch out of your prime to a couple more years, that's the difference between
Hell yeah.
4 million and $25 million.
I mean, when you see the pictures of like Kevin Durant's feet, you're like, oh, well, no wonder your Achilles. Like, you know, you
That's
had
crazy.
calf issues and your
Yo,
Achilles.
was it LeBron or Durant? The picture I was showing, they ain't got no little toe. Remember that?
Yeah, it was one of
Ugh,
them. Like
that
it's
shit was
just,
mad.
but you
Fuck.
know, jamming them into those shoes, and it reminds me of I think I've watched half of Last Dance, Jordan thing,
Yeah.
and it reminds me of when he's talked about uh going out in his first pair of Jordans after years of wearing other shoes, and how bloody and jacked up his feet were after wearing
Destroy
like
my Knicks, man.
I was like,
Remember the days.
oh, what? Like, but if you think about it, like people used to play in Chucks. I
Yeah.
don't like so. I mean, I can't understand how like people playing these nice, cozy, comfy, soft shoes, and they get a new pair every game most of the time. Like, what's going
Well, I
on
think that's
here?
part of the issue, right? You're blocking the
Yeah.
neural stimulation to the feet. So if there's no sensation, their body has no idea where their knee is in space because there's so
Right.
much cushion. It's like, hey, I can step wrong forever. Versus in those Chucks, you take a bad step, or if you land flat-footed or wrong, your
Yeah.
body's gonna know immediately because you're getting
Immediately.
that feedback right away. Versus, you know, these guys mechanically, they can be terrible because we're giving them all the tools to pacify.
Yeah.
You pacify them and their body goes, oh, okay, I can do this wrong. And you're just going to create equipment to help me do it wrong. You're not going to look at the problem and say, you guys have no, dorsiflexion or plantar flexion. You have no range of motion at your hip to extend, to actually drive the force from the hip. So instead of addressing that, here's these cool shoes to help you jump higher.
Right.
Or here's a lot of cushion so you can at least get out there and play for the next weekend. And then you're going to be sore as hell for 5 days. But at least we got you through the weekend, right? And that's why I feel like, to your point before athletic training, a lot of it was that. Me tape you so you can play, and I'm just gonna keep taping you to get you by this season. It was never like, let's find the cause of this issue. What's the root of your problems?
Right.
I wonder, especially like because we know that what happens to the feet if you just continue, like if you just leave them in regular shoes, and like the loss of being able to receive information from there, and then they start to adapt to accepting that type of force in the shoe, and then like just when you combine these things together, like at what point does it run out, right? And back to the point of like mitigating that to some degree, I think like if you have better access to the information from the feet, and like neural stimulation, as you say, or like proprioception, whatever you want to call it, like that's going to eventually lead to better skill on the court anyway, right? Even if you don't do it all the time, but if you spend some time like earning that back, I would imagine that gives the body more options, right?
Well, I could say from a couple of athletes I worked with that played basketball, I had them training barefoot, because all my clients, when they come in, the first thing they do is take their shoes off. I don't let anyone train with shoes in my gym. And them saying that they felt their toes grab the shoe inside. So while they were playing, they actually felt their feet do this and contract and grab the ground, and was basically reaching for the ground. So to your point, yeah, like they're in those shoes, but when they go to cut their feet, automatically we're doing the thing we did. And I'm only training them an hour a day that they were barefoot and working with me. So it doesn't take a lot to train the body to do what it's supposed to do naturally. It just needs to be reintroduced to it. And so it's not, they have to walk around, they don't have to be that athlete running down the street barefoot to train their feet to get stronger. You know what I mean? It just needs a couple of, a spot in the day to reintroduce this information back so they can use it on the court or whatever sport they're playing.
The NBA played all games barefoot.
Can you imagine that?
I know Nat like the point that you don't wear shoes.
Hell yeah. I love that shit. I'm all about that shit.
Nah, of course you all about that shit.
Because I'm Asian. You racist ass motherfucker.
Hey, we don't wear shoes in our house either, man. Like, hey, no. that's nasty.
But I was joking aside, Tobin, Rich and I was actually talking about Tobin earlier. I had a person who's a big guy. How much do you think Tobin weigh? Like, he's down now, but I think
he's +2 because I mean he's a taller guy. So
yeah, like I think he used to come in around 280, and like this after he had lost some weight, but he's way below that now. Anyway, his foot got stuck in a rock on the side of a mountain. His body fell over, so he basically tore everything in his midfoot. He got up, was in shock, started to stumble down the hill. So he's like trying to run so he wouldn't fall. So he's going at full speed. That same foot kicks a rock mid-stride, and he falls over again, and then he hikes out 5 miles. So, like, yeah, it's fucking. And like he had a misdiagnosis, so it was just a really bad situation. And long story short, is he spent 18 months in PT, and they when I spoke to the PT, they were like, if he ever walks close to normal again, we'll be happy. Like that was their idea of what it was gonna be. So with him, he developed capsulitis under the middle toe of both feet, and add to that first foot was like when I met him 2 years after the injury, it still looked like a big ass sweet potato. Like that, it didn't, like, you couldn't see the ankle, you couldn't see the malleolus. No control of the toes in these. Actually, I don't want to give any of those other details, but like his life was very difficult, right? And through with him, I learned a lot about feet, and so did he. And when he started, he had to wear those big ass Hokas, right? Just because otherwise he wouldn't be able to walk in his walker at all. But now this is a dude that, like, you know what those Soft Star shoes are, Chris? Soft Stars. They literally look like moccasins, bro. Like a millimeter fucking leather sole, and he's like running trail runs in these goddamn things, running on a concrete with him. Like, he would run barefoot if he didn't live in San Francisco. You know what I mean? Like he's like a barefoot fanatic, and it's like, and to like, so he went really deep in the rabbit hole of feet. But like, yeah, like we did a lot of barefoot training. Like that's where I really started to have to study about that stuff and really like sharpen myself up on that. But like barefoot and like just the feet in general is like is not enough people paying attention to that. Not enough people think about that, and not enough people thinking about it deeply enough. I feel.
Yeah, I think it's money because like you know, when I go to like, so when I travel to Asia, for example, and I spend like a lot more time in like either sandals or flip flops or like barefoot around the house. And like, it's not barefoot around, like in my house, we have carpet. So I'm not really on a really solid surface a lot of times. Um, and then also you have on socks. I think people don't realize that like socks are also restrictive, like to some degree. Um, and but when I'm in Asia,
Toe
it's hot.
socks. Toe socks.
When I'm in Asia, it's hot, so I'm not wearing socks a
Right.
lot of the time. And the flooring, because it's hot. There's not a lot of people who have carpet. It's usually like tiled flooring, and so I'm walking around on these surfaces, and after the first 2 days, I'm like, God damn, my feet hurt. And I'm like, what happened? And it's literally my feet have been working so hard at like getting that force from the ground and like getting this nutrition and this information and just being like, we're getting all of it. Like it's just like dumping into the bottom of your soles, and to the point where my feet are just like, oh God, I'm tired. Like,
Mm.
kick me up for a bit.
Man, I thought my barefoot training was good because again I have turf in my gym and the ground and everything, so I'm always barefoot at the gym, and I'll wind up walking outside or whatever on the concrete with it. So I thought my feet were good, and so I went with Mike, went to Croatia, and they have the rock beaches, like shard rock beaches, and I'm watching little kids run on it back and forth, no problem. I was stepping like a old, like, you know, when you burn the bottom of your feet and you're trying to tippy toe, I'm like, and I'm like, man, on mine, I'm like, my feet are good. I can do, whoo, boy, I was pain. I've never experienced stuff like that with my feet ever, man. So it's like, it's one of those things, there's levels to it for sure.
There
Oh
are
hell yeah,
levels.
there's
There are
levels to
definitely
it, bro.
levels. There are definitely levels.
Yeah, Tobin literally bought like different sizes of gravel and different like rocks to put in his backyard so he could walk barefoot on it. Like
That's
he
a
went
real
all the
deal.
way in.
Serious. Yeah, all the
Yeah.
way in.
Serious, yeah.
Um, yo, so um, tell us a little bit about. I know you said you have a book coming out. One of the things that I think I've been noticing, like, it's a lot different. And I think the first time I was exposed to it, or the first time I was seeing, is when we did the Movement Art Summit. Um, you know, of course, I was more focused on giving people kind of a connection between movement and overall like learning and just bettering yourself, like why movement and exercise and like how all these things feed and nourish a person. But what you presented was different than I thought you were going to, and it was more about mindset, and it kind of evolved from the first one to the second one. But I know you've been pushing out a lot of mindset related content titled philosophy. So tell the people a little bit about that.
Yeah, man. Well, it started when, from doing all the movement stuff, I realized how my creativity started to kind of grow. So as I got better at movement and different capacities as far as movement, I started thinking a lot different. And it's almost like it opened up this whole world of personal creativity for me and changed my mindset on what was possible. Again, going from never being able to even stand on my hands or do anything to 4 years later learning how to do handstands and being able to do it from, and as I got better at these movements, I'm realizing things are opening up in my life. So I had done a lot of reading on just mindset and flow states and things of that nature, and seeing how they intertwine so much. Because again, going back to school, we learn bone, muscle, ligament. We don't learn system together. So I think when it comes to fitness, we learn movement, just the body. We don't learn about the mind and how the mind affects the body. And so if a client had a traumatic experience and they were beat as a child, let's say, and they weren't allowed to raise their hand, that shoulder impingement may have nothing to do with a physical limitation. It may be an emotional or mental limitation that you have to work through as well as the physical. So it may manifest itself in something physical. So learning about mindset and how that works really drove me down a rabbit hole of, all right, you may not be able to do that, not because your body's limited, but maybe mentally you're limiting yourself. And so the whole philosophy program was just these different principles, different ideas of, kind of thinking outside the box and not limiting yourself mentally, so that you can free yourself that way as well as the physical sense. And then that kind of led to when my first son was born, and you guys would definitely appreciate this having kids, was creating these whole 18 principles. And that's what I wrote this book called Build Your Legacy. It's coming out in like a month or two, actually. And it's 18 principles I wrote for my son, my first son, when he was born. And it's like rules to live by, because I think we send our kids to school and we kind of let other people instill morals and values in them. And we do it in the home, but some homes are broken homes and they don't have their own rules. So I wanted our home to have a set of rules. Here's what you're going to live by. Here's the legacy we're leaving for you. And their rules passed down from my parents and my girl's parents and their grandparents, and things that they always said. We all have a saying that if we actually, what did your grandma always say? Well, she say something, right? Everyone has that thing, but they're not written down where your kids can read it. So I created these 18 principles, these rules. And so my kids will always know what we stood for. And if they want to add more as they get older, that's up to them. But we kind of always bring these up and always mention these things. And they're very simple stuff, basic things like treat people the way you want to be treated. That's a simple principle that if you would just learn that, you would probably treat people a lot better, right? But what if we said that from the age when they're born? My son now at 2 years old, he knows. And I told him, you got to be a man of your word. If you say yes, it means yes. If you say no, it means no. And so if you ask him, what does yes mean? He'll say yes. What does no mean? No. So he's understanding, he's 2. He doesn't really fully understand what he's saying. But as he gets older, we just reinstill that and keep reinforcing that. And then eventually, as he gets older, he'll leave the house and he'll think about these things. Because I know I find myself, as soon as I moved out, I started cleaning my room like crazy. Like, why am I always cleaning? And I'm like, oh, my mom used to always freaking clean. And, she always thought cleanliness was so important. And so when I wound up leaving, I'm vacuuming in my dorm room. and I got a pledge on all this stuff I learned from my mom that I'm now doing when I moved out. So I wanted my kids to have a solid foundation. So that helps mold their mindset, and that helps when they get older, when they leave the house. Hopefully they'll be good people. And I think that's what we need a lot in our world and everything that's going on. You just need people to have a moral compass and not so freaking corrupt and just money driven people. So I wanted my children to be that change, similar to what we were saying earlier. We jumped on. You got to create the opportunity, man. We can't be waiting for handouts for everyone, because they're never going to come. So you got to make that opportunity happen yourself. So I'm like, if I raise 2 solid men, that will be my legacy and my gift to society. Here's 2 guys that are solid. They ain't gonna be punks. They ain't gonna sit there and beg for handouts from you. They're gonna make shit happen because they were taught that that's what you have to do. And so that's where the whole philosophy and mindset stuff came from.
That's beautiful.
It's dope. Yeah, I think it's important because um it's funny because that whole idea of we are in this space and time right now where it's hard for everybody, right? Um no one could have predicted this COVID thing. And we're, of course, in the you couple that with poor leadership, and you have a recipe for disaster, which it has been for a lot of people, unfortunately. But as I was kind of saying, like you said the other day, I was doing the live, and was kind of speaking to that to some degree. Like for some of us, we see no other, like we were born hustlers, right? Like you look at certain people, like for myself, I tell people this all the time, like I had to figure out how to live for a few years in Thailand as a non-Thai citizen. You know, I had to figure out how to have a means of staying there, right? Um, and the only way you can stay there is have a work permit and to be, have permission, right? Like, um, and so I had to figure that out real quick. And once I figured it out, I did what was necessary to do that. Um, and so to me, it's kind of like that old saying, like, if you can make it in New York, you can make it anywhere. Like, you know, I truly feel like there's, to some degree, you have to experience having to make it somewhere. It's like you hear people like Steve Harvey, like, I lived in my car for 3 years. You hear people like, what's the actress comedian, who
Haddish.
yeah, Tiffany Haddish, she lived in her car. If you listen to Kevin Hart's story, if you listen to his book, you'll hear that this what you see of Kevin Hart today is not is the product of a lot of years and years of doing things that A, you might not necessarily want to do, and B, that was not easy. And maybe he wasn't compensated in a way that, was fair, or whatever the case was. But I think a lot of people just think like, oh, why isn't it happening for me? Why isn't this? And it's like, for me, I'm 43 years old, and I'm just now, like, just now getting to the stage where I feel like I'm crossing over into another level of income, another level of my profession, like all of that. Like, this happens for people at different stages as they work. And you might have been like, I mean, I put in, like, I remember sitting in Bangkok up until 4 a.m. when I got a 6 a.m. client, up until 4 a.m. trying to figure out how the fuck WordPress works. Like, I would literally sit there on the computer, like, what if I change this? What if I do this? How do I do this? How do I do that? Look at another article on with ideas and stuff on how to do this or that. Like, just to create a blog. How do you connect your blog to your Twitter account? How do you get your site to start ranking on Google? I'm following all these different things. I'm no tech. I don't know what the hell I'm doing. But I knew this. I couldn't pay the dude. I'm still friends with him today. Comsign, what's up? Shout out to Comsign out in Bangkok. Um, he built our first website, and that shit was too expensive. I was like, bro, I can't do this. Can't be paying this money. So that's why I was like, let me dig into this WordPress and create my own, thing and my own platform and get it ranked and figure out how to do it myself. And so with that template, coming back home to the US, I was like, man, can't nobody stop me. Like, I landed like I already got my website up. I already, like, if I want to refer somebody to some stuff, like, you go read it over there. Um, I was already had a strategy for how I was going to get in front of people, on my own without having to go to a big box.
Well, that's why I appreciate what you were saying in the live about hip hop, because I think a lot of people don't give hip hop the credit it deserves. Like, they were in the Bronx, and I'm from the Bronx, so now that's in my culture. Like, we grew up around hip hop, and it was created out of nothing, out of struggle, out of taking other beats and disco records and scratching and creating this form of music for us to express ourselves. Because there was no internet, there was no this, there was no other outlets, and so they created something, and we're just like, this is us, like, take it or leave it. And like you were saying, it's been infused in everything, and now you can't escape hip hop. You need it to do well, right? And it's like, here's this thing that started out of a necessity, out of a need, out of a crazy struggle, and something beautiful came out of it. And I think that a lot of people, they don't want to go through the struggle, they don't want to go through the hardship, they just want to take the easy way, and they don't want to make the mistakes. And I think the mistakes are so important, because that's what helps mold us and build us. And so I think, to your point, like, it's important that people see the struggle, hear the story behind the person, and respect that story. So when we say something, so if you guys say something, upgrade guys, it's not, oh, these guys just talking trash. It's like, nah, bro. Like Nat has a long history to back this shit up. He's saying, so if he says something to you, it's not coming from a place of being disruptive for the sake of just argument. It's like, yo, I'm telling you, that's not the only way to get it done. Because I'm telling you from the trenches, from experience. I'm not talking to you from Tom Meyer's book, page 37. I'm talking to you from, I had this guy in Tobin who had this issue and we were able to make him run again. So if you tell me that it's impossible, you better be able to back it up with some real world experience. Because if you're telling me it can't happen and I got 5 clients who made it happen through my work, there's nothing you're going to say to me that's going to change my mind. Like, let me see your experience. And there's a lot of presenters getting up there with no experience. Like when you ask me that, if I still train clients, I need to still train clients because that's where all my ammo comes from. The people who are up there just talking, some of them have years of experience. Some of them barely seen clients and they were sucking when they were seeing clients. Yep. And they get up there and got this platforms and it's like, yo, how are you still talking when you don't see any clients? And I'm in the trenches saying your shit doesn't work because that was 15, 20 years ago. And there's so many better ways to do it. And that's why we had the whole Movement Art Summit. It's like, yo, we're speaking from almost like, from where the people are, not from where the platform is.
Yo, I feel that shit. I feel that shit. Like you saying that shit really made me think of the perform better bullshit. Like, fuck out of here. Like, fuck.
Hey, when he sent me the video, so he had sent me the video of Todd Durkin doing some nonsense with the mace, and I was just like, Nat sent me that, because he was at the Perform Better thing, and he sent it to, he's like, yo, Rich, check this out. He knew it was gonna get under my skin, and so I posted it, and went in on it, and I don't know Todd, I don't really care, like honestly, I don't care who he is. Like I didn't care then, I don't care now. People have this weird feeling that, oh my God, you can't, like, he's up there, you can't, like, I don't care. I don't care. Let me say that one more time for everybody in the back listening right now, or everybody who just picked, I do not care.
But do you give a fuck, Rich?
I don't. And so I posted it, and my intent was to say, like, if you don't know what you're doing, how are you going to be at a conference, like demoing this to people and showing, like visually showing people that you don't know what you're doing. And at the end of the day, like that's where people are going to, like, they look to you as the source and the professional colonizer. And because people have this colonized mindset, they live within it, right? It's like I'll keep going back to the same analogy about the fish in water, right? We are the fish in water. We don't know we're wet, right? Some of us have chosen to be amphibious and be like, I'm gonna step out of the water and I'm gonna look back and see, yep, there's water there. And then when I get wet, I know that I'm wet, right? So most people do not know that they're wet. They're in the water. And so their mind is in this space where they cannot extract themselves from this notion that because he looks a certain way and because he is at this space and he is given this platform, that he cannot be confronted or assaulted, because assaulting him assaults the very fabric of your beliefs. And so for me, I'm like, let's rip this fabric up and start constructing new stuff, because we have every right as people who have been in this thing and have our own interpretations and have our own experiences to bring to the table. We have every single right to be leaders and lead new thought processes and expand the consciousness of the people in our industry.
Yeah, but and I'm not going to defend Perform Better by any stretch, but I'll tell you what, I was trying to be a presenter on their circuit. This is years ago. I went like 8 years straight. We had this whole group called Next Gen Fit Pros, and we were being the next generation of presenters, and we were trying to do all this stuff. And what it came down to these guys was, and I think you're 100% valid in saying we got to test their chin. And if they want to be the top dog and their chin ain't tough enough, then they don't deserve to be the top dog. You get punched in the mouth, you either swing back or you fall. And that's where it is, right? Like in the hood, we fighting.
That's the way we
If
go.
I lose, bro. Like it is what it is. At least I fought back, right? So a lot of these guys, they've never been tested, but the reason why they keep getting these platforms comes down to ticket sales. It has nothing to do with actual validity of their intelligence. Some of them are smart guys, and maybe they had 2-3 presentations that were good, but and then that skyrocketed them to this level where Perform Better knows if the name Todd Durkin, Martin Rooney, and Gray Cook and Mike Boyle's on the ticket, everyone's buying tickets.
Yeah.
If they put us on the ticket, they ain't selling those tickets, right? So it comes down to them maintain their business model, and then they can say to one of those guys, here's a mace, or they call it a lever bell or whatever it is. We need to sell this thing, right? I need you to come up with XYZ thing. Let's launch that presentation at our summit. And then all of a sudden, as soon as he's done, I guarantee you, everyone ran to that table and started buying, they sold out, sure, from that. So once that works, now they're just saying, do it again, do it again, do it again. They're not really, their model, even though they say to push whatever, I don't know, help fitness expand, whatever. At the end of the day, it's about selling product and moving product. And so if they can move product, they don't give a fuck what the person's doing. As long as no one's getting hurt and everyone's having a good time, that's all that matters. And then you have kind of where we're coming from was more like, yo, there's people who've been doing this thing. When let's say it's the mace, someone like yourself put years into perfecting their craft of this thing. It's blatant disrespect that you just have someone who's and that's why I say there's two different, there's fitness professionals and there's fitness performers, right? There's fitness performers are making that money and just pushing product. The fitness professionals, the people who put the work in behind the scenes, they're just trying to get better, master their craft. They're not rah, rah, rah in front of the camera all day long. And so it becomes this divide. And I think people like us, like you guys putting out podcasts and putting out content, are trying to bridge that gap and move this needle, bring the nerds more to the forefront where they need to be, where they should be more celebrated, and tear some of this celebration and celebrity down. Because it's like, you guys, you get to a certain point where you think you're untouchable, and it's like, nah, man, that's because the nerds have been quiet. But now with all the access to information, you guys can come out and put that stuff out and be like, yo, I know my stuff, and I can entertain a crowd if I need to. And I think that's where, we get lost at with fitness, is there's really two different worlds of it. And we're trying to mesh it all together and make it all make sense. But what some of these cats are doing, again, it's just entertainment. It's just they're really out there. And unfortunately, people follow it. And they follow and they think that's what fitness education is.
One of the specific event that I was talking about, the thing that really sort of made me done with Perform Better. I mean, I'd been done, but I needed the credits or whatever. But Todd Durkin's, I'm not saying anything about the dude, but his fucking presentation that year was about his total knee replacement. And how he was, like, he explained how going into it, he didn't know if he was going to live or die. And, like, it was possible that he would die and all this other shit. And, like, I didn't know if it was, it was like a serious knee surgery, whatever. But rewind that shit back. You train in a way where you have to get a knee replacement. What are you doing with the people that you train? You're a source of education for trainers to do what? To train people in a way where they'll need total knee replacements? Like, this fucking idea that they get up and they be rah-rah or fucking Perform Better, put them on, they are somehow credible, is straight fucking bullshit. Because I still remember my very first Perform Better, less than a year, I was less than a year in the industry. I literally didn't know shit, and I was so fucking amazed. I was like, oh my God, fucking Dan John and Gray Cook, and not realizing how much I didn't know, or realizing that they also didn't fucking really know, right? And I'm 2 years goes by, I'm like, I didn't get as much value out of the second year. Third year goes by, I didn't get that much value out of the third year. Finally, I show up and I'm yelling from the crowd when they're saying shit that is not true, or they're asking a question and I'm answering it and they're overlooking me, and I remember this fucking fuckers in a Dana sense, something was talking about breathing and shit, and she was talking about, because when you breathe through your nose, like that's how nitric oxide is produced, right? And she was like, oh, there's some type of vasodilator that happens if you breathe through your nose. I forget what it's called. I'm like, it's nitric oxide. And she looks at me and looks away. She goes, I said, it's nitric oxide. And Jeremy's like, hey, quit being a dick, man. I'm like, what the fuck? Her presentation is on breathing. She doesn't know what fucking vasodilators produce when you breathe. Like, what the fuck? And then, so she asked Mike Boyle, she's like, what's the name of it? He goes, I think it's nitric oxide. I just shouted out 3 fucking times. Like, you know what I mean? But you couldn't hear the fucking Asian dude in the crowd, but you could hear Mike Boyle in the back, right? It's like, and fucking, so like, to my point, you came to give a presentation about breathing, and you don't know what the fuck the name of the fucking vasodilator, like, and Todd Durkin gets up like, what are you giving to us? Like, you want to treat us, you want to teach us to do what? Because your type of training ends up in a total knee replacement, at least, right? Because we don't know what other injuries he has or he hasn't talked about. And again, this is just like me asking questions, like, what are you teaching me to do then? Right? I don't want to go and train somebody in a way that's going to be a total knee replacement.
And the crazy part of what you're saying is, and this just looks at, I guess, in a broader perspective, right? Because the turnover in fitness is so vast. So you get people like, you go to a gym, 6 months later, you come back, they got 15 new trainers. And you're like, yo, what is going on, right? So the turnover is so quick. So every year you go to perform better. Again, I went 8 years straight. You're going to get almost all brand new people. And you're getting 1,000 brand new kids walking in. And then you got people like us keep going. And we're like, wait a second, you said this same thing 12 years ago at the last presentation I went to. And to their credit, and I don't even know if it's credit or whatever, there's 1,500 brand new people there who've never heard that you should do an assessment, who've never heard about foam rolling, you know what I'm saying? So it's like, if they speak to us, the people who've been doing it for 15, 20 years, we're obviously going to have conflicting ideologies. We're like, yo, bro, you don't know what you're talking about. But they can't speak our language at a certain point, because you get to a part where you're so far ahead that it's hard to speak to a rookie. You know what I mean? And so they have to find a way to always speak to the rookies or the lowest hanging fruit in the crowd. And that's why, again, stuff like this is so important, because we're the ones saying, we're taking, all right, cool, you push the envelope to this part and you talk to the rookies. When you're ready for the next level content information, go listen to Upgrade Guys podcast. Go listen to these people, because that low-hanging fruit group is saturated, and that's where they've made their mark and made their money. And again, to your credit, to what you were saying, yeah, there's some of the stuff they're saying, they don't even know it that well, but people want to hear, they heard that name, people want to hear them say it. But when you want the real information, here's the source. And I think that's where the disconnect is, or where they do a bad job of not promoting people like yourselves, or people who can take this to the next round. You know, I would love for them to get up there and be like, yo, you want to learn more about this? Hey, I'm going to do this crazy presentation. Like, if Todd Durkin would have got up there with the lever belt or the mace and said, yo, here's 5 sources where you can learn the real good stuff, I'm going to show you surface, and just be real with it. Like, that's my thing. If I don't know something, I'm going to be like, bro, I don't really know that well. I'll show you what I know. But if you want to know the real, you know, go see this. If you want to know FRC, you know, you go speak to Hunter. You go speak to Dewey. You speak to you guys. If you really want to dive deep into it, I'm going to give you the pails and rails and the cars that I use. But if you really want to know how to program it, just same thing with stick mobility. I got all my stick mobility stuff. You know, I've learned from Dennis and stuff. But if you really want to dive deep, I know my boy Jared, he does stick mobility like religion, right? Just like if somebody wants to learn more about animal flow, they'll come to me, and vice versa. And I think if we can promote each other, all ships rise with the tide. So if we can really help each other out, we can all get better. But if you want to hog the lion's share of the pie and not let no one eat, now you're creating confrontation. And now we got to say your name and say it and almost discredit you to let you know, like, bro, you should be sharing this pie, not trying to hog it all for yourselves.
Right. And I mean, even if it's not sharing, like, just be honest, right? Like, this is really not genuine. That shit really fucking gets to me, because like you know, you up there, you full of shit. Like, you up there full of shit. Like, I can see it in your eyes. Like, I can read you, motherfucker. Like, I grew up in the hood. I know about this shit. I've been in places where I gotta read a motherfucker. I can read you. You full of shit. And it's like, but you talking to all these people who don't know you full of shit. Right? So when you call it out, like, oh, not you, the asshole. Well, I asked a question. I'm just, I'm trying to get perspective, and I'm being honest. But you can't say that. You can't do that. You're not doing that.
if in that moment, if whoever was presented would have been like, thank you for that. What's your name? And give you some shine, right? And give you some credit. Like,
Right.
that person, you know what I'm saying? That's all it takes. And I feel like presenters in fitness and everywhere, it's like they're so afraid to be wrong. Like if I'm doing a presentation and someone calls me out and be like, you know what, you might be right, man, because I realize that today's truth is tomorrow's fiction, man. And this may be today, this is real. And in 6 months we learn, oh shit, fashion never existed. There's this other thing. And we'd be like, now I gotta go learn.
I love like, I mean, we talked about this a lot, like the hip hop thing. And I think we embraced the notion because the way we, like I said, I think this last couple years, like just been trying to like figure out our like what makes us who we are and how we want to represent ourselves and how we want the upgrade guys to be received. And I think that conversation about hip hop and like what you said about like if somebody, where we grew up and how we grew up, right? We're being forced as men of color and women of color to participate or behave inside of certain confines that we don't feel comfortable in, right? We grew up in a place where you're constantly challenged, and that's what toughened our skin. That's what made us tougher. That's what made us, that's how we survived. And so and these guys have not had to have that survival, and so they create this structure and they create this space where they can feel safe, and they don't get challenged. And like you said, like because we grew up in a culture of hip hop where it's commonplace to go at this dude and we battle it out, and then like they crown a new they crown a new guy, but you're not going to be sitting up there forever, right? Like the top 5 today is not the top 5 from 5 years ago. When people talk about it, I mean, there's certain people that stay in that top 5 and there's no doubt about that, but I mean,
but they're anomalies.
And they're always working at their craft, right? They're always working. Like Black Thought is never removing himself from the top 5. Like that's just impossible to do. You can't do it. But
how does he continue to get better?
But
like how the fuck, seriously, how is this motherfucker still getting better?
New inputs.
Like,
I mean, why you gotta ask that? That's a stupid question to ask, bro. You know that.
It's
a
rhetorical question. It's a rhetorical question, motherfucker.
You know the answer.
See that rhetorical? I knew that word. You see what I'm saying? Yeah.
But I mean, I think it's important that like when we like, I think we had posted a photo and Dr. Moses Bernard was like, "Oh, that looks like a mobility, y'all like the mobility mixtape album." And that like hit this like light switch with like who we are. Like, oh shit, we're actually like, yeah, we actually are in like we're posing for an album cover. Like that's weird because like we didn't intend to do that. It was just a screen cap from a video that we were doing, and it just made me think, you know what, like this is who we are. This is what we do. And like you said, you got to be able to take these punches on the chin. You got to be able to deliver them back. And that brings everybody's level up, right? If nobody's battling, then I mean, look at the rappers today. Look at the hip hop that we have today. I mean, it is what it is. I mean, I like the beats and stuff like that, but nobody's really going at each other. I just heard LL.
What was his name when Kendrick put out that disc kind of a while ago? It made J. Cole and all them step up. Like, all right, we gonna battle this. And some people, fell below the wayside and couldn't deal with it. But you see how Kendrick and Cole get down. It's like, yo, you got 2 real artists, and everyone else that you're gonna, be just singing pop songs and love songs and dancing around.
Right.
But you got people who are really about the art, and you have people who just want to make the money off the art. And I think I always tell people it's about having a hip hop mindset, because I knew for me growing up, if you had a certain color sneaker, I'm trying to rock a different one just to be different, like just to separate myself from you. You know what I mean? I think that's what hip hop mindset comes from. Like, you guys, like, we're going to put this podcast out and it's going to be different. We're not going to sit here and big up the same people everyone else does. We're not going to have the same people on that everyone else does. We're gonna have our fucking people on, people we enjoy, and we're gonna create our own culture here. And if you don't like it, cool. You can go over there and you can go dance that.
Keep listening to Joe Rogan's stupid ass having, stupid ass. What's that dude's name? That crazy ass motherfucker.
Kanye?
No, he had Alex Jones.
Who the fuck is that?
Stupid ass motherfuckers having Alex Jones, conspiracy theorist ass motherfucker.
I don't know.
I never heard that name before, but
yeah, go.
I mean, I've heard the name. I
go
just
look
didn't
it
know
up,
who
and
it
then
was.
you go look it up, and then you'll see.
I can be brutally honest. I've never listened to a Joe Rogan podcast. The only things
Neither
I've
have
heard
I.
podcast have been the few times he's mentioned Chappelle, because I'll research and find stuff on Chappelle.
Mhm.
And if whoever's mentioned him, I'll hear what they say. But outside of that, I've never listened to the whole podcast. If ain't Dave Chappelle on his podcast or talking about it, I'm probably never going to listen.
So, I mean, going back to this thing about the way things have been built up to keep things where they are. Remember, I was, because I listen to everything. I listen to people I don't agree with a lot. I would argue, like, I probably half the shit I listen to is shit that fucking just makes me irritated. But it's a skill for me that I'm trying to develop to listen to, like,
Nonsense.
Yeah, even if it's because, like, to me, like, I can learn something from everybody somewhere. But, like, also, I just need to know the other side, because I don't ever want to be in a place where I'm, like, reassuring myself, you know what I mean? Like, and, like, removing opportunities to recognize bias. But I was listening to him one time. I don't know how I got to it, but him and this dude named Jocko or something, two white dudes, and they were talking about the issue of race and police brutality in America. And it was like, and then they started talking about how, like, oh, but nobody's talking about black on black crime, and and what's gonna happen if we defund? And to them, they frame defunding the police as taking police forces away. And it's like all this uneducated shit that neither of you know anything about. Neither of you have ever studied any critical race theory. Neither of you know what it's like to be a person of color, and I would argue neither of you have close friends or family that have related their experiences of race and how that is in America to you. But you are accepted as an authority by a large number of people. We can't deny that Joe Rogan has fucking reach, and that dude Jocko too. But they felt qualified immediately to start talking about an issue that they know nothing about. They started talking about an issue of race that they know from the white side, and that's not a race issue, right? You don't know, like. You talking about black on black crime. You didn't talk about white on white crime. You didn't talk about how systemically people that look similar to each other are placed in a geographical location, and where the resources go or don't go, and what type of businesses open up where, and how these things all affect each other, intergenerational criminality, and like the incarceration system. You're not talking about all those things, right? Those things are not even on your radar. You want to talk about this thing, black on black crime, or like what happens if we take police away, and like, oh, this many murders happen when when they did their thing in Seattle, try to do that's you're combining all these things that have nothing to do with each other and don't make any fucking sense, are not logical, are not true, and you're presenting it as truth, and that's a fucking issue. And then but yeah, like, so the whole thing is built up to let the people who are speaking speak, but the people who are speaking and putting the messages out and the information out got us to where we are now. And are we going to keep doing the same thing and expect something different to happen?
That's why we need all of our voices.
That's why I need the upgrade, guys. That's why you guys are here, man, to spit that different truth, and again, to have a unique perspective on it. Someone who's Asian or someone who's black, and now you got Puerto Rican on here talking. Like, you got different people speaking from a different perspective, because we all operate from our own perspective. So those guys, to their point, I feel like their ignorance is their bliss. And if the money's coming in and the ratings are raising, and there's all these people saying how great they are, there's no reason for them to change. Like, listen, if when I was first exercising, and like I said earlier in my story, like lifting, starting to meet women and realize how this is helping out or whatever back in the day, if I was not getting any women and being fat was the thing, and they were all going after the big fat dude, maybe I would have been trying to eat McDonald's and get big. Who knows, right?
Biggie.
Oh, we're gonna be what makes us successul, man.
Hey, so I know you had to jet trick or treat with the kids, but normally we have some questions. Nice hat for those of you viewing YouTube. You can see the hat. It's got the costume going. We usually have some questions coming in from Instagram, but nobody answered any questions, or nobody asked any questions, so we just let it go. And then usually we have a few questions of our own, just off the cuff. But we're gonna have you on here again, so we don't need to do all that for sure.
Yeah,
We're gonna
man.
have.
Fuck that. I want him to say one thing. Like from your 18 principles, if you're comfortable sharing one that you wish everybody would know.
Oh,
He did tell
that's
us
so
one
many.
though.
No, but he told us one. But is there one that he feels like is like
No,
a shit from the
they're all hit
Bible?
hard, but I'll give you one we haven't said yet, and that we've kind of touched upon it, but not mentioned the exact principle. So one of the principles is when all is said and done, more is said than done. Talk less and do more. And so along that principle, I feel there's a lot of talk. There's a lot of people saying we should do this, the country should do this, the president should do this, and there's a lot of talk. But when all is said and done, more is said than done. And I want my children to do more. Like you guys are doing something right now. People talk shit. There's no diversity in the fitness industry. What? Listen to Upgrade guys. This is two dudes who don't look like the guys on stage who are doing their shit, right? You guys are actually taking action. And so I feel a lot of people don't take action. They just talk and they complain. So you're either part of the problem or you're part of the solution. And I feel like you guys are really part of the solution. You're putting content out there with your Facebook stuff. I mean, sorry, Facebook, but with the Instagram page, there's a lot of good content up there. You can, you use those swipe. I'm reading them stories too. I'm swiping like, oh shit, yeah, hell yeah, speaking my language. I can share this now. That's an action step, right? I can now share their content, and maybe someone in my audience will start following you guys. So I do feel like people need to take more action and stop fucking complaining, because no one's really listening. You could say it on Facebook, you can say it on Instagram, you can talk about voting all you want and all this stuff, but no one's really listening. The higher ups at that level, the motherfuckers are having dinner together and chilling, and they're telling us all the stuff that they want us to hear. But unless you start taking some real action steps and making a difference, nothing's going to change. So I feel like you got to take action steps in your own life first, take care of your village, your community, and then that's going to permeate hopefully to the greater scheme. Because I think just even with our own children, right? Like I see you not wrestling with your kids, beating your kids up on Instagram, whatever. Rich, I see the time you're spending with your kids, because with them, the most important thing with kids is more is caught than taught. And so they're gonna catch the examples if you live in a certain lifestyle, and then they're gonna carry that legacy on. So as long as people keep taking action, man, and start raising children that are action takers as well, I think we're going in the right path. But if people just keep talking shit and yelling on Instagram or on Facebook and then disappearing and never doing nothing about it, well, then I hope you felt good for the moment, but that ain't gonna do nothing for us.
Yeah, that's real talk. I mean, Michael Jackson popped into my head the other day with like Man in the Mirror. And that, like, I woke up in the morning. I woke up in the morning and I was brushing my teeth and I was like, I'm starting with the man. I was like, oh
That's
shit,
it. I'm asking him
Mike.
to change his ways,
I
baby.
was like, yo. And then because it's weird because we like, I thought about that, and like I think in elementary school when we graduated elementary school, they had taught us, I forget which, it was Heal the World.
Hmm.
They taught us Heal the World, and we sung it in 5th grade. And I was thinking, see, I'm in San Francisco. I got these progressive liberal teachers. They're having us sing Heal the World, make it a better place for you and for me and the entire human race, right? And people sleep on Michael Jackson. They got all this stuff to say about Michael Jackson, all this negativity to say about Michael Jackson. But if you go through that man's catalog and listen to those songs, they're incredibly important music
Hmm.
and incredibly influential stuff. And so I was like, Heal the World and Man in the Mirror. Those two are like gems. But anyway, I know you got a jet. You got Halloween coming up. We still got a few minutes here before Halloween jumps off because it's still light out. But I don't think
My
there's gonna be a
doorbell
whole.
rang a couple of times. I get my candy goes.
All right. All right, man. Well, thank you so much for having us. Can you let everybody know where they can find you on social media or internet or wherever?
Yeah, man. Well, you can find FLO_fitness on Instagram. If you look me up on Facebook, Chris Flo. And those are honestly the two best spaces to come check me out. And again, the book's coming out, 18 Principles. So build your legacy. So if you follow the Instagram page, you'll get information on that. And you can email me, flofitness@gmail.com, and we can chat it up. And I appreciate you guys, man. It's been a blast, and we can talk for hours. I know we can do a full
We
hour
go all day, bro.
for sure. Next time I'll make sure we got 2-3 hours carved out for it.
All
No
right.
doubt.
Well, thank you for coming on with us. Thank you for agreeing to take some time out of your Saturday evening out there on the East Coast. Love and blessings to you. For everybody, thank you for tuning in to the Upgrade Your Shit podcast. Remember, we got mobility membership at just $39 a month at theupgradeguys.com. You can also find us on Instagram at The Upgrade Guys and on YouTube as well, The Upgrade Guys. Check us out. Peace out.
Upgrade your shit. Upgrade your shit.